Good morning, I'm Justin Wormuth. The League of Women Voters turns 100 years old next year, and their influence on policy from the federal to the state level is only growing. This morning, the president of the Florida chapter, Patricia Brigham, is joining us to explain what the League is pushing for as we look ahead to 2020. But I wanted to bring you in and talk about some of the things that you guys are really pushing for voters to approve or vote for as we move into the 2020 election. So. The first one that I found very interesting, and I always wondered this just as a voter, how come as an independent voter you can't vote during the primary election? This proposed constitutional amendment has enough signatures, and it looks like it's going to be on the ballot.
Right.
Tell us why the League of Women Voters is for this proposed amendment.
Well, we believe in open primaries. We did a study in 2015, which went on for 2 years. And it found that in Florida, voter participation in the primaries was 23%, while the national average was 37%. So clearly, we weren't getting enough people out to the polls during the primaries. And why is that? Because if you're affiliated with a minor party or with no party affiliation, and we're seeing a growing rate of young people especially not interested in being affiliated with one party or another. So if you don't have those major party affiliations, Democrat or Republican, then you are not able to vote in the primary because Florida is a closed primary state, one of only 9 states in the country who continues to be closed primary.
And when it comes to this amendment, we're not talking about anything that's at the federal level at this point.
No.
This is the state level, cabinet, governor, state legislators as well.
Correct.
Eventually, I think you want to get this one done, I would imagine, or the authors of this amendment, they want to get this one done before moving on to that, just kind of separating it. But there's some opposition from both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Why do you think there is opposition to this?
Well, that is so interesting because it's actually uniting the parties for a change, because usually we have such a partisan divide, but both of the major parties don't like the open primary system. And that is because they are pro-party, and the League of Women Voters is pro-voter, and open primaries are pro-voter.
So explain how this would happen. So basically, a list of the candidates, it has their party affiliation, obviously, and is it a top 2? Is it one from each party? Explain this.
The voter would receive a ballot that lists all of the candidates, no matter their party, and it is a top 2. So the candidates who receive the most votes, the 2 candidates, would go on to the general.
So it's basically a runoff, essentially, right?
Well, the general would serve as the runoff.
Serve as the runoff, right. So in theory, you could have 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, or one of each.
Well, yes, but Florida is a purple state.
It sure is.
So the number of Republicans and the number of Democrats are close in Florida. So we're not a state like California. We are definitely a purple state. So it's very unlikely that you're going to see 2 candidates from the same party on the general election ballot. Unless
you live in a district that leans one way or the other.
That's true.
Could be a factor. But it's interesting, and I think as we see more and more, as you mentioned, we have 3.7 million NPA, independent voters, now in the state of Florida. It continues to grow.
Yes.
And as we see this trend, more and more people are going to the polls probably saying, I'm looking forward to casting my ballot for whoever's running in the primary. How come I can't do that? And this would be a way to fix that. So it has enough signatures, but do you think that ultimately it will be on the 2020 ballot? What is your guess on that?
It looks very likely that it will be on the 2020 ballot, and we do support the open primary. In our study, the number 1 open primary that we like is the open primary, true open primary, which is you go into the polling place, you get the ballot, you can say, I want the Republican ballot or I want the Democrat ballot. But this will have 1 ballot with all of the parties.
Yeah, the concern, I think, is when you say, I want whichever ballot, you could have someone who is maybe an independent, but a Democrat going in and saying, I want the Republican ballot, and choosing the lesser of the candidate in their eyes against who they would want to
Well,
and vice versa.
That's true, but many times they're doing that already in the general, and this is going to increase voter turnout. And we want to encourage our young people to vote. And when we see millennials in bigger numbers going to a non-party affiliation, and then if they're not educating themselves or not coming to our education seminars on voting, they're going to arrive there, find out, wait a minute, I can't vote in the primary.
Right.
We don't want them to become discouraged and say, well, forget it, we're not going to vote in the general. We want to set a lifelong habit of voting that begins when you're eligible to vote.
And my